Dun, 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 dun. It's the story of three dudes. I can't sing, but welcome back to the Fantasy Football Breakdown and the very unbrady bunch, because I owe Mr. Dunton an apology. For the last 2 weeks, I've been saying that the Bucks are actually good, and the last 2 weeks, Dunton has been saying they aren't, and he is 100% correct. They lost to a junior varsity team this week, and yeah, I don't know what to say, but we're back for another episode, and we do have a ton. There is a ton of fantasy football, real football goings-ons that will affect the fantasy football universe. But before we dive into that, let's welcome back. Finally, you may not recognize him dressed as Rainbow Bright over there, but the Fanduel Fee is back on the attack. Welcome back, Fee.
Hey, it's good to be back. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to talk fantasy. It's the Halloween episode. I was upset that I missed the last 2 weeks, but family first, so got to take care of what I got to take care of. So I'm happy to be back, and yeah, let's get to it.
Yeah, and joining me, who been here, it's been the Wayniac and Mr. Dunton show the last 2 weeks. So Dunton, how you doing?
I'm doing a lot better than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. So are the Carolina Panthers, so that's not saying too much.
Yes, they are.
Anyway, we're not going to waste any time this week because there is quite a bit to unravel, and we're going to do that in Buy It or Bullshit. Let's get started. One of the big news to open the week was that Frank Reich announced that Matt Ryan will no longer be the starter in Indianapolis. It came out later that he does have a grade 2 shoulder sprain. So he wasn't going to start this week anyway, but Frank Reich circled the wagons and said it doesn't matter. He was going to be benched anyway. Let's look at this. This is 38-year-old Matt Ryan, already on the decline in his last year in Atlanta. Is this whole Matt Ryan debacle buy it or BS? Fee? This is 100% on head coach Frank Reich. Fee, go.
Bullshit. I call bullshit. I think this is more so on the GM for the Colts, Ballard. Trying to make a stopgap by picking up a 38-year-old quarterback in the first place. And hoping that he's going to take your team to the promised land with a whole bunch of very good players. Part of it, I think, is their offensive line hasn't been as good as it has been in the past, which is odd. I'm not really entirely sure why. But their offensive line has not been as good as it used to be. And that's part of the problem. But also part of the problem is having a 38-year-old quarterback.
Fair enough. Dutton, what do you think?
I'll go one step further. I'm going to call it BS, and I'm going to say it's Colts owner Jim Irsay's fault because 2 years in a row they've signed old, diminishing quarterbacks. They had Phillip Rivers 3 years.
You forgot Carson Wentz.
That's right. I forgot Carson Wentz. So, yeah, they signed 38-year-old Phillip Rivers. They signed a busted-up Carson Wentz, and then they signed Matt Ryan. Yeah, Colts, go find a better quarterback than these old people that are being retreaded in multiple retreads. So I can't blame the coach because the coach is just dealing with what he's got. Fee's right. The GM's messed up, but this falls on ownership. You're not doing something right if you're going after quarterbacks who are being retreaded.
I'm going to give you each 2 points, because you bring up valid points, but I am going to tell you this. Matt Ryan was brought in by the GM and the owner that you said to run a ball-controlled offense. You had Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines. Last week, they were both back in action. And they said that they were going to get to the plan of attack, and Matt Ryan threw for 50 times. There isn't a 38-year-old in the game of NFL that should be throwing the ball 50 times. So Frank Reich has to take some of the blame. He has to shoulder. So you see what I did there? Because Matt Ryan, he has to shoulder some of the blame. And Matt Ryan's a lot more Ben Roethlisberger than he is Tom Brady at 38, right? Like, you're seeing the decline. There's no reason he should be putting 50 balls in the air. None, especially when your wide receivers aren't good. Michael Pittman's good, but the rest are just good, right? Like, there's no Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne out there, for crying out loud. I just don't see the need What do we think about his backup? Is anyone jumping out there? Do we think he's a waiver wire pickup this week?
No.
Ellinger? No, I don't think so. I haven't. I don't know anything about him. I haven't seen him play.
I don't think anybody does, right?
But to be honest with you, with the way the Colts offense has been and the way their offensive line has been, I don't think there's a shot in hell that Ellinger's going to get you anything good as far as fantasy points. I mean, he may be able to manage a game for them, but I wouldn't pick him up on a waiver wire for fantasy purposes.
It's also interesting that they passed right over Nick Foles, right? You have a veteran in there. Granted, he's 33. It's not like he's some young guy, but it's weird that you pass over a veteran to go with what you got, because is this guy the guy that is this really who they're building their future on? He was a 6th round pick. It doesn't seem like this was the guy that they're let's just hand the ball over because this is the way we're going. They could still draft another quarterback next year.
They could. What's the Colts record currently?
3-3-1.
Yeah, because the Texans got
so they're not so they're not completely out of it. What I was gonna say was they want to see what they have in this guy, right? You know, throw him out there and see what you got, and maybe go for it. But or maybe they're just gonna be like, hey, we're gonna toss this guy out here because Nick Foles may win you some games. Maybe this guy they know that he won't, and maybe they're trying to get a better draft pick out of this,
possibly. Yeah.
And kind of maneuver their way, for the future that way.
That's fair. That's definitely fair. Okay, let's move on. Give a shout out to Fee. At the beginning of the season, we said which rookie would have the highest upside, and you did say Breece Hall, and he was cruising and looked very good until his season sadly ended, because he was having a great few weeks for a very surprised Jets team. However, big news number 2 of the week was shortly after James Robinson became a New York Jet. Fantasy football breakdown, long-time favorite, James Robinson. Dunton, we'll start with you. Buy it or BS? This makes him, James Robinson, an RB1 in fantasy football.
I'm going to go BS on it. I'm going BS because I just think the Jets are going to rely on Michael Carter more and use James Robinson in goal line situations. And so he might vulture some touchdowns, but I just think the Jets are looking at it and, they drafted Michael Carter. Michael Carter's a solid back, and I think they're going to utilize him more. And then, like I said, use James Robinson closer in goal line, 3rd down situations. So until I see something out of James Robinson, I would be weary about putting him as your number 1.
Wait.
Okay. So what I wrote down here was goddamn right, but he's not an RB1. I think he's more of an RB2. Because I don't think he's a top 12 running back in the league.
Right.
But however, James Robinson is still a very good running back. And I'm not sure, well, I do know is that Etienne is better, and that's why they were running him into the ground over there in Jacksonville, and not playing James Robinson. We all know, and by the way, long time meaning what, 1 year, right? James.
Yeah.
So, but we all know that James Robinson is really good, and we all loved him. I think, yes, they have Michael Carter. Yes, they may start off with Michael Carter. However, I think James Robinson is going to take over that job eventually, because I think they're going to find out that James Robinson is still a really good running back and still probably better than Michael Carter. James Robinson is not some 30-year-old chump who's over the hill, okay? He's 23 years old, 24 years old. He's been in the league 1 year, 2 years. He's still young. He's still got plenty of, tread on the tires. And they're going to find out that James Robinson is a better running back than Michael Carter.
1 point to Dutton for bringing up some good points, but 3 points to Fee because I think he nailed it. I think this week Michael Carter is the man. I think Dutton's right there. I think this week, but I think in the overall game, running game, James Robinson's better between the tackles. Michael Carter's got to be the guy that gets outside, and that's kind of not your RB1, right? He needs to be that off-pace, offset back, whatever you want to call him. So I do think eventually, I think Dutton's right now. I think James Robinson, for the first couple of weeks he's there, is the guy that gets the short yardage carries and until he gets comfortable, and he will vulture probably the touchdowns for Michael Carter and get the goal line work. But I think Fee is right in the long run. And this is his last year. Remember, this is a rental. But I think down the road, if this is a team that we're talking about the New York Jets contending for a playoff spot, it's got to be James Robinson that takes over the offense as the RB1. Let's move on to a controversy we saw on Monday Night Football. Dutton and I spoke a little bit about whether or not there was quarterback controversy, and Dutton said there was none last week because Zappe should be the starter. Moments before game, well, not really moments, a few hours before the game, Adam Schefter comes out and says that Bill Belichick announced that you may see both quarterbacks tonight. It could be a 2-quarterback system, which we would find out later from offensive players that they had no idea what he was talking about when he said that. Sure enough, Mac Jones came on the field and started the game and didn't move the ball, and Zappe hour began, and we had a couple of quick touchdowns and then a dismal second half. Fee, we'll start with you. Buy it or BS? It's officially Zappe hour in New England.
I'm buying it, but I also think who cares, right? so Zappe came on right after Mac Jones threw an interception. So it wasn't just that Mac Jones couldn't move the ball; it's that he threw a pick, and then they pulled him. I've never been a Mac Jones believer anyway. Whether it's for fantasy or for real life football. And honestly, I think Bailey Zappe's got something. And I think that, he showed it for those first 2 series when he drove them down for touchdowns. But what happened was New England got down big, and then he had to try to throw the ball all over the place. And as a rookie, especially, you're just not going to come up with anything unless you're some superstar,
especially with the Patriots receiving core, right? So, it's not like they got big play guys,
right? And that has something to do with it also. But you saw a glimpse of what Bailey Zappe can do. However, if you're going to get down big and you're going to make him throw the ball, and everybody knows that that's what's going to happen, he's going to get taken apart, and that's exactly what happened at the end of that game. But I do think it's Bailey Zappe hour. I think. It's hard to say right now, but I think he's probably the better quarterback over Mac Jones. But I don't know. I mean, I guess time will tell.
Yeah. Dutton, I think we know your answer. We already discussed it a little bit last week. What do you think? Anything change your mind?
I have changed my mind because Bill Belichick changed everybody's mind because he announced Mac Jones as the starting quarterback this weekend. So
he said it last weekend, and Zappe played more minutes.
I know, it's crazy. So yeah, I don't know if it's the Bailey Zappe hour in New England, but it doesn't mean that next year it won't be the Bailey Zappe hour somewhere else,
or vice versa.
Right, vice versa, or later on this year. I mean, trade deadline is looming, and there are teams that might be looking, hey, what can we get out of this guy? So I'm BSing it because Bill Belichick is making this really hard for us to believe in either of these quarterbacks.
Yeah, I'll give 1 point to each of you. Both brought up very good points. One thing that Fee said that I like, I think Zappe has a lot more fantasy appeal. Mac Jones may be a better game manager in a real time for the Patriots to win games. But I think from a fantasy aspect, Zappe, he's definitely more fun to watch, right? He just came on the field and was like, bazoom, 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 bazoom. And I don't care what level he was at. I know it was Western Kentucky. If you throw for 6,000 yards and 62 touchdowns, you have talent, right? Yeah, sure, maybe the numbers are inflated because of the league that you're playing in. You're not playing Alabama. You're not playing Georgia every weekend. But you still got to have the ability to throw for 6,000 yards and 62 touchdowns. He wasn't out there throwing 1-yard screens with running backs that were taking it 100 yards a play, right? The guy has talent. I think he's more exciting. I think he is better for the Patriots, but like Dutton said, Belichick is claiming, and if you believe anything that guy says, then shame on you. But for now, where it's Wednesday night, apparently Mac Jones is the starter, but I don't believe it until I actually see it.
I hadn't heard that Belichick had said that Mac Jones was the starter. I must have missed that part.
It was just right a little bit before we jumped on.
Yep.
So let's talk about the Ravens backfield. The Gus Bus was back in action, and everyone, again, Coach lying, said he was going to be worked in, and he took over. He had 16 carries. He scored a touchdown. It was about 66 yards, I believe. Had a great day. He looked like an RB1. Dutton, we'll start with you. We had Kenyon Drake run for 120 yards and a touchdown 2 weeks ago, and then Gus Bus came back after pretty much a year's worth of injury and became the RB1. Done. Buy it or BS. You could trust Gus Bus as the RB1 in Baltimore.
So I'm gonna BS that. Here's why. He's the RB1 in Baltimore, but do you want him as an RB1 on your fantasy team? I'm a little skeptical of that. He's still coming off knee injuries. He's got a short turnaround this week going against the Bucs defense that looked dismal, but they are still sixth against the run. It's a Thursday night game. It's a must-win game for the Bucs. I don't think it's as much of a must-win game for the Ravens because they're still head of the division because they beat Cincinnati. So you got to be careful about making him your RB1 until you see some consistency from him. And that's what I'm worried about is how consistent is he going to be?
That's fair. That's fair. Fee?
Yeah, I agree with everything Dutton said. Part of the problem, again, and we've talked about it before, is guys coming back off knee injuries. They're just not the same in the first year. Did Gus Edwards look good last week? Sure, he did. But the Ravens are a running team, and they're going to run the ball, and that's why he's getting a ton of volume. But they do still have 3 other running backs there, okay? And just because they decided to give him the ball 16 times last week doesn't mean that he's necessarily going to be ready to be handling that kind of load going forward. They do have other guys, and it's going to be hard to trust him going forward until you see that it's consistent in the fact that they're going to give him the ball that many times week in and week out.
No points for either you. Is a trick question. Lamar Jackson is the RB1 in Baltimore. It was a trick question. But I mean, that's the reality, right? Lamar Jackson is the RB1 in Baltimore. But with the points of both of you, what you both said, especially Fee, you do have Kenyon Drake, you do have Justice Hill, you do have Gus Bus, and who knows, maybe in 5 weeks, they said you have Dobbins getting back into that mix, right? It's too many mouths to feed, especially when it's Lamar Jackson gets the first, second, third, and fourth look. So yeah, it's tough to trust him. He was a nice play. I think you could play him in matchups. I kind of agree with Dutton, even against the Bucs defense that was shattered up last week. I don't know that this is another week to trust him back-to-back weeks. But that brings us to something one of you two mentioned. I believe it was Dutton, and that's the trade deadline is looming. That's next week. So, Fee, we'll start with you. Buy it or BS. These are 2 of the bigger names that have been talked about in the past couple weeks. Buy it or BS, Cam Akers and Kareem Hunt actually wind up staying put. What do you think?
I'm going to buy it, but in my own opinion, I think Cleveland would be dumb not to move Kareem Hunt at this point. I think that he would probably have more value than Cam Akers would. And I think that Cleveland would get a lot more out of it by trading him than keeping him. However, I think they'll probably keep, both the Rams and the Browns will probably end up keeping these guys because I don't think they're going to be able to move them for necessarily what they may want for them. I've heard, yes, there's rumors out there for both of these guys, but I can't see someone trading for Cam Akers or giving up much for him anyway, because he really hasn't done a whole lot this year. Kareem Hunt, on the other hand, has done more, but the Browns have really been sticking with Nick Chubb, and you just haven't seen it out of Kareem Hunt. But the guy's healthy. He hasn't been hurt in the last couple of years. And I think it's just the fact that Cleveland is sticking with Chubb more so than Hunt kind of losing his luster. So I think that they'd be able to get more for him, and I think they probably should trade him, but I'm not sure that they'll be able to.
Dutton.
I agree with a lot of what Fee said. So here's what I'm saying. I'm buying that they're both going to stay put, but for different reasons. Nobody wants Cam Akers. The Rams have not done him any favors to make him a wanted commodity.
Absolutely.
And I think the Browns are very cautious because they are a running team right now. They don't have a really solid quarterback until week 11 when Deshaun comes in.
Yeah.
And God forbid Nick Chubb gets hurt, they can plug Kareem Hunt right into that lineup, and I don't think they lose very much. I don't think they're on equal footing, but I think they're a lot closer than Cam Akers is with anybody on the Rams. I don't think anybody wants Cam Akers, and I don't think the Rams get a lot for Cam Akers. Fiamano, you're right. Like, the Browns could get a 3rd-round pick easily for Kareem Hunt. I don't think the Rams get but maybe a 6th or conditional round draft pick if they're lucky for Akers. So I'm buying that they both stay, but for different reasons.
Yep, agreed.
Well, first of all, 6 points to you both. Great points on both. But first of all, football trading deadline is not the baseball trading deadline. We don't have a lot of trades, and we've already had 2 pretty significant ones with Robert Quinn going to where the heck did he get? The Eagles today, right? And the James Robinson trade. Both those guys went on the cheap. Quinn was a 4th-round pick, and here's why I think Hunt and Akers stay still. To both of your points, James Robinson's a 24-year-old, $500,000 running back, and was a 6th-round conditional pick. Right? There's no way you're getting anything better than that for Cam Akers. Right. No way. And Kareem Hunt, I don't think you could get a 3rd round. I think you're looking at a 4th or a 5th rounder for Kareem Hunt just because of the way the market's going. And I don't think you can give, to your point, Fee, because of how close he is as arguably the best handcuff in football. I don't think you can give him away for a 4th or 5th round pick, even if it's a 5th round conditional and you can move up. That's a big risk. So that's why I think, and I agree with you, Fee, I think they both should move. The problem is I think Akers has a better chance to move because I think the Rams just want him out of there. Like if someone says, you know what, we'll give you extra cleats for Matt Stafford and a 7th rounder. And they'll be like, all right, just take him. Right. But Kareem Hunt, that's not the same case. So I think Hunt, is more likely to stay. And I think the James Robinson trade really hurt both of their value because he went so cheap, and I think that hurts them. So I do think they both stay. All right, moving on to the old farts club. We have Russell Wilson falling apart every week. Matt Ryan has been benched. And then we have 2 other old guys playing absolutely horrendously. This isn't really in a buy it or BS form, but it's more of a question to discuss here in our forum. Dunton, who gets benched first, Brady or Rodgers?
This is an interesting question because there's such different dynamics with these teams, right? So the easy answer is Aaron Rodgers, so the Packers can say, do we have anything in Jordan Love, right? Mm-hmm. They went out, they drafted him in the 1st round, and they have that. However, the Bucs went and drafted Kyle Trask, who's their 3rd-string quarterback, behind Blaine Gabbert, who's their 2nd-string quarterback. And Kyle Trask was a 2nd-round pick who they might see as their future, because let's be honest, Blaine Gabbert is not their future. I'm going to go with Aaron Rodgers for the simple fact that the Bucs division is a lot worse than the Packers division. So I don't know. It's awful to think that either one of them are going to be benched, but I mean, if I'm in charge, I'm benching Tom Brady so he can just retire because I need him retired. For the listeners at home, as a Bucs fan, I told all these friends, these 2 and many others, this is exactly what I was worried about 3 years ago when the Bucs signed Brady, was the drama that's going to come with Brady. We sold our soul to the devil for a Super Bowl and we won it, and now we're dealing with the repercussions of that. But I really think that 1st-round pick sitting behind Aaron Rodgers is too tempting for the Packers to give a look at what do we have and do we have anything with Jordan Love. So if you're going to bench somebody first, you're going to bench Aaron Rodgers.
Hey.
I agree with everything Dunton said. And if I had to choose one, I would absolutely choose Aaron Rodgers. But the reality is neither one of them is going to get benched. There's no chance at all that Tom Brady will ever get benched. Period. End of story. If anything, he'll get hurt or something, and maybe they'll need to throw someone else in there. Maybe, yeah, you can, sure, hurt. But there's zero chance he will ever get benched. So, I guess, by default, it's Aaron Rodgers, but I don't think they'll bench Aaron Rodgers either. Just for the fear of all the, all the crap that came with Aaron Rodgers the last 2 or 3 years that they had to deal with all of that. I don't think they want to do that again. So if you bench him, you're going to have to deal with the fallout of him going on the internet or wherever the hell else he's going to go and talk and podcasts and everything else and talk about your team and your organization and what's going on. And I feel like that's just kind of like backstabbing yourself, right? So I feel like neither one of them will end up getting benched.
No chance Brady retires midseason and benches himself. No chance, right?
I mean, if Giselle makes a phone call to Todd Bowles
If he retires, he could fix his family life, right? He's back on everything.
No, that's exactly why he won't retire midseason, because he already destroyed that part to play again one more year. And so if he were to retire, he'd be saying that whole thing was a big mistake, and the whole thing, I did it for nothing. And I don't see him doing that. He can't do that. He's already committed. He's pot committed, baby. Yeah, that's it. You're already there. Yeah, you can't give up. You can't give up on that again, and be like, oh, I made a huge mistake, and then retire midseason. No way. You got to ride this thing out and see where it goes, and then try to fix your home life after the season's over. After you actually retire this time.
Fair enough. And then here's our last buy it or BS question. The concussion protocol. We do need player safety. We need it. We can never, ever, ever have a Tua incident ever happen again. But the new concussion protocol may be a little bit too much, and the refs maybe are enforcing it a little bit too much to make it look like the NFL went too far, and then they could find a new happy medium after season. Buy it or BS, there is something a little weird going on with the concussion protocol. And the reason I'm asking is because for the second straight week, if you look at Amon-Ra St. Brown, they clearly said 2 minutes after he was off the field, he had no concussion. He passed every test. He didn't look like Tua, but because he was down on the ground for, what is it, like 30 seconds or whatever, I don't know the exact time, but because it took him a second to get up, and it's that word, the A word, not asphyxia, there's a word for it. Mm-hmm. He wasn't allowed back in the game. And I mean, are they enforcing it too much on purpose to make it look like they went too far? Buy it or BS Fee?
I'm buying it. While I agree with everything you said, and they absolutely need to protect the players and all of that, there's still an element to the game where if the guy passes a concussion protocol test, he should be allowed back in the game because he doesn't have a concussion. Now, the whole situation with Tua was all fucked up anyway, okay? Because someone made a mistake and someone messed up, and they missed it, or they made a conscious decision to let it go, or whatever it was, and obviously you can't have those types of things. But everything you have in place with concussion protocol should work and has been working up until that point. Mm-hmm. So there's no reason why a guy who you may think has a concussion, who passes a concussion protocol test, shouldn't be allowed back in the game. And now I get it. I do get it. I understand where they're coming from, and they need to protect the players and their image, I suppose, right? Public perception is it means a whole lot to a lot of people. But I do think that they're taking it a little bit too far.
Dunton?
I'm buying it because it's a complete overreaction by Roger Goodell to save face.
Yeah.
The Tua thing was a smack in the face of the NFL of how awfully that was handled and how terrible it looked. I mean, there's so many things wrong with the NFL protocol in general, like this whole independent neurologist. How could they be independent if they're hired by the NFL? Right. They're not independent. I'm sorry. Like, in order to have an independent neurologist, you need to call on the loudspeaker in any game. Is there a neurologist sitting in the stands? We need you to report to gate C. Like, you know what I mean? Because you hired them to be there. So there's nothing independent about them. It's an overreaction by the officials coming down from the top brass, including Goodell. Player safety should be number one. There's a lot of money by these owners and teams invested in these players. They get that. But right now, it's an overreaction until they can get together at the end of the season and figure out a new system of how it should work.
To be fair, I think when they say independent, they're independent of teams.
Yeah, not, but still hired by the
not
NFL.
necessarily of the NFL.
Correct. Which is, I agree with what you're saying, Fee, but it's still fishy, right? You're still part of the NFL.
Right.
And let's face reality. And I started the whole thing by saying, you have to protect these guys, but it is the NFL. They're going to get hit, right? You can't pull a guy every time if he looking like Tua was
is
a
different
rarity,
than
right?
Amon St. Brown.
Right. That was a complete rarity. We've never seen anything like, we never saw a guy get up, almost fall flat on his face, and then the coach say, all right, Skip, go get him. Right? Like that was the anomaly. We've never seen anything remotely close to that. Right? Like, I don't know if you remember when we were little in the Super Bowl with it was I don't remember. It was one of the Bengals 49ers, and Tim Crumry on the very first play on the kickoff, his leg went like this.
Yeah.
That would be like the coach being like, you got it? Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to send you back out there. His leg was at a right angle, right?
Right.
Like, that's what the Tua situation was. Like, to have these guys clearly being like, coach, I want to play. I'm fine. Like, you got to be able to draw the line somewhere. You can't hold everybody out, because eventually you're going to have these 55-man roster, whatever they are, rosters, 53-man rosters, and you're going to have 48 players on the sidelines with how much they're enforcing it, right? You're going to start running out of players. But that's neither here or there. It's a tie this week because I forgot to keep tags of the points, and you guys all made good points. So great job to everybody. Let's move on to second down, and it's Calvin Ridley's locks of the week. We should call it Fanduel Fee's beautiful blue locks of the week this week. Last week, my winning streak came to an end. I took the Falcons, and they were a joke of a team. They look like very much like the Falcons we expected. I was fooled. Dunton was correct. You picked the Jets, and unfortunately, we went with the Falcons because of my win streak. So the fantasy football breakdown pick lost. But we're back. We're going to win. We're going to get back on track this week. Fee, you've been away. We're going to start with you. Fee, what do you got this week?
All right, I'm going to start us off with Philadelphia minus 10.5 against Pittsburgh. They're coming off a bye, and I think I read that they're something like 6-0-1 in their last 7 coming off the bye against the spread. They're the best team in football. Pittsburgh's terrible. I don't care who their quarterback is. Their defense isn't good. And Philly's really good. I'll take them minus the 10.5.
I like it. And especially if Quinn could get any sort of the playbook down, their defense just got infinitely better. Dutton.
I'm going with the Raiders minus 1.5 against the Saints. The Saints are a shell of what the team they used to be a couple of years ago. I think the Raiders finally have figured out that maybe they should run the ball more with Josh Jacobs and then set up the pass, which could be beneficial to them going forward. So I'm going with the Raiders.
Yeah, Jacobs looks good, right? Jacobs looks like the guy that we liked the first year of this show and completely. Right. But we said it all last season. That was Gruden, right? None of us blamed the Josh Jacobs. We were like, they're not running him.
Yep.
I had 2 picks and I couldn't decide, but I have decided. But I left both picks up there so these 2 gentlemen could see them. The Commanders are getting three in this. With this wonderful battle of the 6th round, 3rd string quarterback for the Colts against Taylor Heineke for the Commanders. And then my other pick was the Giants are getting 3 at Seattle. Fee, you're shaking your head, but I think I'm locking in the Giants getting 3. I don't think the Giants are in a place to be getting points right now. They're Saquon Barkley's controlling the clock. He's a beast. He's an absolute animal. I know they're banged up, but they are getting wide receivers back, right? Wandell is looking good. Darius Slayton, that only helps him. And I just think, I don't think Geno is the guy. I like Ken Walker a lot. I don't think Geno's the guy that's going to beat the Giants right now. So I'm going with the Giants plus 3.
Yeah. So first of all, I think you're crazy. Okay.
Fair
Secondly, I feel like this is like the first letdown spot for the Giants.
It is. It very well.
They're playing in Seattle, where it's extraordinarily tough to play with all of that noise. You got problems on the offensive line. They're probably going to have 7 false starts in this game. And I just don't think that even getting 3 points is going to be enough. I don't think that they're going to be able to pull it out. The Giants have been the luckiest team in the NFL this year.
Are they lucky, or are they doing exactly what they need to do to make sure they have the ball last to win?
They are doing what they need to do. But they're in such tight, tough games. And see the way Seattle's been playing, especially at home, I don't know. It's tough for me.
I am super impressed with Geno Smith or what he's done. I just think the Giants defense is tough enough to hold him in check, especially if you don't have DK Metcalf. This whole thing with DK Metcalf, It's weird. Oh, it looks like a 3 to 4 week injury, and Pete Carroll has him at questionable still, right? Like if you don't have DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett's already banged up, right? He played last week banged up. Now we're talking. You got a big advantage for the Giants. But that's my pick.
Yeah, I just think it's a letdown spot for them.
It is. I could see that. Who do we want to lock in? I'm actually. The 10.5 scares me. I think the Eagles run away with this game, but the Steelers have been being pesky enough that they've been hanging around, right? Like, I'm not saying it's going to be a field goal, but like this could be a 7-point game, and that 10.5 just doesn't cover because the Steelers are just feisty enough to piss gamblers off across.
They have a lot of pride. They have a lot of pride, the Steelers.
Yeah. To be perfectly well, I like the Raiders, but I also like the Commanders this week too. I kind of like that pick that you had there.
Yeah, why? I don't understand how the Commanders are getting points. I mean, I guess they're on the road. I mean, I guess that's what it is. But neither of these teams are good, and the Commanders just beat Green Bay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We could go with the Commanders. I'm fine with that.
All right, we're locking it in.
All right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, after 2 long weeks, you finally get what you've been waiting for. Fanduel Fee's Stacks of the Week. Take it away, Fee.
All right. So, starting us off this week, I'm actually going with Geno Smith. He is down at 7K, which is, I think, like the 8th or 9th quarterback on the list. And the way he's been playing and putting up yards and points, it's hard to ignore that salary. I'm surprised he's not higher salary-wise. And again, like I said, I feel like it's a bit of a letdown spot for the Giants. I think it's a good spot for Geno, especially if you want to stack him with either Kenneth Walker, who's priced way up. He's, I think, the third or fourth highest running back at 8,400.
Yeah, that escalated quickly.
Yeah, it did. But it would make it would give you a pretty unique stack. Because I feel like a lot of people would be pushed off of Walker because of such a high salary, and probably not a lot of people on Geno. But you could stack him with Lockett or Walker. Just if you believe that the Giants are in a letdown spot here, but also you're going to be saving a ton of salary on a cheap quarterback. I also really like Jalen Hurts this week. I mentioned it earlier. The Eagles coming off the bye against a terrible Pittsburgh team. You could stack him with AJ Brown or Devontae Smith or Dallas Goedert for that matter, especially because tight end is just such a premium position and there aren't a whole lot to go around. AJ Brown would cost you a ton at 8,200 because Hurts is 9,200 himself. Devontae Smith is down at 6,900 and Dallas Goedert is only 5,900. So you got some wiggle room there. My next stack on the list, I got Tua playing Detroit. He's down at 7,700. Really not a whole lot for salary wise for a quarterback against a Detroit team that gives up tons of yards, tons of points. You could stack him with Waddle. He's at 7,800. If you wanted to stack him with Tyreek Hill, you could because Tua is so cheap. Tyreek Hill is really expensive this week, though, also up over 8,000. But you could also stack him with Raheem Mostert at 6,800 if you think that the Dolphins are going to get up big on Detroit and maybe they run the ball a little more. Mostert's only at 6,800. Really not a terrible price for a decent running back. And then some singles, some one-offs for you. I like Alvin Kamara this week. He's only 7,800 against the Raiders. I really like DeAndre Hopkins this week against Minnesota. Minnesota hasn't really shown us a whole lot on defense, and Kyler Murray has obviously locked into D-Hop, and he's only 7,900. You mentioned him earlier, Wayne. I really like Wan'Dale Robinson this week for the Giants. He could be a good comeback option for you if you decided to go with that Seattle stack. He's only 5,900. And I know that he was terrible last week, but Drake London is 5,600. And I know the Falcons, all they do is run the ball. But they're playing Carolina. And Mariota has shown that he can toss the ball deep. And, at 5,600, Drake London isn't a terrible kind of, toss and play.
Yeah. Question for you. You're going to say no. I know you're going to say no, but he's had. Do you know what Danny Dimes was at?
His salary?
Yeah,
I think here, I'll bring it up real quick. I can get it.
because
I think it was
he does have 2 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks, and the Seahawks defense is not what you would call elite. And I just like him with Wandell back. I do. I think he's a good cheap play to build a crazy lineup.
Where is he? He
See,
is
so if you look how far down you have to go.
no, he's 7,500. So
Oh, okay. That's
he's
kind of a
one,
lot.
two, three. He's actually the fifth highest quarterback on the slate this week. Quarterbacks are kind of lacking this week on this slate. It's you got Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, Kirk Cousins is 3 at 7,800, Tua 77, and
Wow.
Daniel Jones at 75. So you're talking about, I mean, it's almost like a pay up week at quarterback because you could go to any of these lower guys, all in the $7,000 range. Like I said, Geno Smith was 7,000, but you could go up to Danny Dimes at 7,500 for $500 more, and you got the fifth highest salary quarterback on the slate.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting week at quarterback for sure. But you could go Danny Dimes if you're so inclined.
Definitely. All right. Well, thank you, Fee. I'm glad that we got those back into the rotation. And now we're going to move on to the red zone and give you your starts and sits for the week. Last week, 2 weeks ago, Dunton, I think we said was the first person to go 7 for 8, and I followed him up this week and I went 7 for 8. Dunton had another good week. You are at 48%, but where you were 3 weeks ago, you've increased to almost 18%. So you're on a very, very much of a hot streak. Overall, we went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of 8 in our starts and sits. On the season, we're at 57% correct. I'm still leading the bunch at 68%, and that's primarily because Fee's percentage hasn't changed in 3 weeks. So he's been holding on at second with 58%. And obviously, like I said last week, we gave you picks like Jimmy G, Zeke, Gerald Everett, sitting the Broncos wide receivers. Both of our tight ends, we told you to sit Logan Thomas was the collective pick. I actually got a few messages for saying to sit Robert Tonyan because the amount of targets he was getting in the weeks prior, and he was a dud. He was the 20th ranked tight end, which amongst tight ends, if you can't be in the top 10, you really had a bad week, right? So let's move on to the new week, and we're going to get into starts and sits. A few things we need to point out real quick are the buys this week, because you do have the Chiefs and the Chargers. And in the words of Fanduel Fee, that is a lot of fantasy goodness. 2 quarterbacks are down. Several receivers are down. Definitely Eckler. You can make the argument that the Chiefs running backs, either one of them you could start, but it's not like they're a big deal. And obviously the best tight end in the game is out of the question. And Everett has been playing very well. Fee, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I got a question. Ezekiel Elliott is expected to miss this week?
I was going to get to the injuries. DK was not practicing, and they're saying Ezekiel Elliott. It's Wednesday. Our weekly disclaimer that it's Wednesday. Midweek missing of practice kind of stirs the rumor mill, but there are question marks that he may not play this week because they have the bye coming up, and that would get him fully healthy.
I didn't realize that. What's his injury?
He got hit
that leg injury.
And he got hit good below the knee last week, and it's been his leg and his ankle, and they're saying they may just rest him so he gets the 2 weeks with the bye.
Interesting.
But again, it's Wednesday. Who knows? But it's something to have in the back of your mind. So let's get right to it. Starts and sits this week at quarterback. Dunton, we'll start with you because I can't believe that you're picking him.
Yeah, because it's the last stand at the OK Corral. So it's as if you're not going to start Tom Brady after this week, you probably not. But this is the week to start Tom Brady. Not to mention they are wearing I believe they're wearing the creamsicle jerseys tomorrow night. So there's going to be a lot of mojo behind that. So start Tom Brady and not to mention every game the Ravens has played has been pretty high scoring. So
that's true.
That's why I'm going with Tom Brady. And like I said, it's the last stand at the OK Corral right now. Because like we talked about, he might be benched before we know it. I mean, I agree that he's not going to be, but people are talking about him. Is he going to retire? Is he going to get benched? So Start Tom
And
Brady.
the one thing I will say that's fair about Brady is, as bad as he's playing, he's not turning the ball over, right?
He's
So
not.
he's still getting you points. Obviously, it's not what you want, but he's at least still getting you points.
He only has 8 touchdowns this year. That's insane.
I know. And also, to be fair, there was a lot of terrible drops last week. It wasn't all on Brady. There was a lot of
including a
terrible
70-yard
drops.
touchdown to Mike Evans.
And that was the first, not first drive of the game. That was a
it was
momentum
the first
turner.
drive of the
that
game.
was a
It was the
dagger.
third play. Yep.
Right. I mean, you started the game off like that. You're Mike Evans, man. You got to catch that.
Yep. And he knew it. So,
Fee. Yeah, I'm starting. I mentioned him earlier. I'm going to start Tua against Detroit. They just give up so much through the air. It's hard to kind of stay away from anybody that's going to be playing Detroit.
And I'm going to come back if we were doing a DFS here. And the reason is that I went with this guy is because if you have a Mahomes or a Herbert who are on bye, there's a good chance Jared Goff is your backup. And if he is, the Dolphins are one of the worst fantasy against the quarterback. They allow 23 points per game to the quarterback. We've seen Goff eat up defenses that are not good against that. And this has potential to be a shootout, right? Especially with what you just said about Tua. I got to agree with you there. But I do think Goff has a good game especially if Amon-Ra is allowed to play, since he was not having a concussion while he had no concussion. What do we think here? Who do we want to lock in? I'm willing to go down with the ship and go with Dunton. I'm willing to go with Brady this week, even though I will never, ever advise starting a Thursday nighter, but I feel like we got to go down. I've been the biggest Brady proponent since the first day we started this show. So I have no problem going with Brady, but Tua is the easiest pick here.
I like Brady. I mean, the Ravens secondary has been crap all year long.
Yeah, and that's why I pointed out that he hasn't been turning it over. Yeah, I
feel like if there's ever a time that Brady needs to get right, I think this is a good game to do it.
Fair enough. Yeah, let's go with it. Dutton or Fee, we'll start with you for running back.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Kenneth Walker against the Giants this week, and the Giants have given up tons of yards to running backs this year. They've been run on consistently, and we've all seen what Kenneth Walker can do with the Seattle offense. They're playing in Seattle. Depending on what side of the ball you're on, if you think Seattle is gonna not necessarily run away with it, but be in the lead in the game, maybe they're gonna try to run Kenneth Walker, to waste as much time as possible. And I think he'll get a ton of volume. And there's really no one else that they got there that they're giving the ball to anyway. So a ton of volume. I'm going with Kenneth Walker.
You're not afraid of DJ Dallas?
I am not.
No, I agree with you. I like Walker. Dutton.
I know you're not a fan of him, but the Browns are the 17th ranked rushing defense, and I think Joe Mixon has a big game Monday night, so I'm going with Joe Mixon.
He's actually, we talked about it last week. The last 2 weeks, he's been running better, right? Like he had those abysmal 2.8 yards per carry to start the season. The last 2 weeks, he's looked better, but they're not. I mean, last week they couldn't run the ball. Why would you run the ball when everything that Joe Burrow threw was a touchdown, right? Like, so you just didn't do it. And it's weird that they're going away from it. Because we discussed the injury, and it said highly likely that he's doubtful right now, I think Tony Pollard's a great start this week, because look what he does with Zeke. Now you're talking about this guy's going to be a 3-down back 75% of that game. And I know the Bears have been good against the running back, but they're still allowing touchdowns and stuff. So I think Pollard's a good start if Zeke is out. That's the key. So you will have to check back before Sunday, before this. But I'm good with riding Walker. I mean,
he's on fire right now.
Yeah. So let's lock him in.
Got it.
I'll start with running wide receiver, and I'm gonna say DJ Moore. DJ Moore was peppered with targets last week. They finally said, and that was against the Bucks, whose defense is infinitely better. Plus, the Falcons are allowing the most points to fantasy wide receivers, and they've allowed 11 touchdowns, which is, you guessed it, the most wide receivers in the NFL. PJ Walker isn't the greatest. He's not the answer, but we did learn last week that he loves having DJ Moore, and I think he lights up the Falcons again. Fee.
I've been waiting all year to say this name. Terry McLaurin. I'm going with Scary Terry. He's my boy. There's no reason to think that he's lost any kind of step or anything like that. You got Taylor Heineke who actually looks for him to get the ball to him.
He does.
And I think that is only going to help him. You saw it last week. They're playing against Indy, again, not a great defense. And I think that Heineke continues to try to get McLaurin the ball. I love his game, and I think that this week would be another great week to have him start.
Dutton.
Because I'm going with Tom Brady, I'm going to stack it like he likes to do in his Fanduel, and I'm going with Chris Godwin. He was peppered with targets last week, just that, and he actually had a pretty decent game other than not finding the end zone, and the Ravens are 21st to pass, so I'm going with Chris Godwin.
Yeah. I really like my DJ Moore, but I don't want to be the bias with my pick. The only reason I'm worried is because fantasy speaking, Indy is good against the wide receiver, but you look at the teams they played, Tennessee, the Texans. We're talking about not heavy wide receiver teams. So how fair is that ranking at this point in the season?
Not very.
Right.
I can go with DJ Moore because most people are probably going to start Godwin. I mean, And
I think most people are going to start McLaurin too, right?
Yeah,
if
I
had
go with DJ Moore. That's fine.
Tight end, Fee, we'll start with you.
I'm going with Juwan Johnson this week. The Saints are playing the Raiders. We've all talked about how the Raiders are against the tight end, which is terrible. And he picked up a whole bunch of targets and catches and yards and a touchdown last week. I don't know.
2 touchdowns. He had 2 touchdowns last week.
2 touchdowns. I don't know who the Saints quarterback is going to be this week. I don't think they know who their quarterback.
Yeah, it's got to be Dalton. They got to go Dalton.
I think you're probably right, but Dalton's also the guy that got him all those catches and targets last week. So I'm going to start Juwan Johnson this week against the Raiders.
And just to add to that, it is Wednesday. Remember, it's Wednesday, but Troutman, their other tight end mispracticed again this week, and that's why he was out last week, and that's why Johnson had the big week. So he mispracticed again. Dutton.
We talked about him earlier as a sit last week, but I think he's a start this week, and it's Robert Tonyan, because coming out of the Green Bay locker room today, basically Aaron Rodgers said they need to cut everybody who's not doing what they're supposed to be doing on the field. And I think the only person he trusts throwing the ball to right now is Robert Tonyan. So the Bills are too good on defense. I mean, this is such a game. Here's the thing with this game. This is such a game that you all look at it and say the Bills are going to dominate. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the Packers could make it close, right? Like, at the end of the day, it's Aaron Rodgers. I mean, he's still really good. And he might not have a lot of time to throw the ball, so he might be throwing a lot of 5-yard passes to Robert Tonyan. So he could end up with like 12 catches for 78 yards or something.
Yeah, I feel like Rodgers is going to sling it this week.
Right. He's going to have to. So, yeah.
Mark it down. 3 catches, 12 yards, 2 touchdowns. Irv Smith is your start of the week. and that's
3 catches and 2 of them are touchdowns.
That's what it's going to be, because the Cardinals are horrendous. They've allowed the most touchdowns to the tight end, and they're the second worst fantasy point-wise against the tight end. We did see before the bye, Cousins start looking for Irv Smith a little bit more. So I think he has a good week. I'm the only reason I'm really worried about Johnson is because we don't have the quarterback named yet, and it is midweek, and if Troutman comes back, but I think we start. My pick would be to start Johnson with an asterisk saying it definitely depends on how the other injuries play out.
Well, I want to start Irv Smith now, so he has 3 catches, 2 touchdowns.
We could do that too.
So we're doing that, and I hope it happens.
Okay, so to recap our starts of the week, Tom Brady's your quarterback. Ken Walker III is your running back. DJ Moore is your wide receiver, and Irv Smith is your tight end. Let's go to sits, and you guys are both all over the place here. Who wants to start? Fee, you're back first. Fee, who are you sitting?
Yeah, I'm going to sit Dak Prescott. He didn't exactly look like Dak of old last week.
I agree.
And he doesn't get the ball to his best receiver, who is CeeDee Lamb, a whole lot. And I don't know. I don't know that they're going to trust him to kind of go nuts throwing the ball, second week back off of injury. Chicago's D happens to be pretty decent.
They happen.
And we saw it in prime time last week, and I just can't. I don't think I can trust Dak just yet this week.
Fair enough, Dutton.
I too have trust issues, and I'm sitting Russell Wilson because I don't trust that he's healthy. I think it's BS, and I know it's the wrong segment here, but I think it's BS that hamstring is fully healed already. And
he said he was doing lunges on the plane ride over. I don't know if you saw the interview. He said,
what does that mean?
Aisle doing lunges and leg kicks.
Yeah, so
whatever they're called.
I don't think he plays the whole game. So I think he tweaks it in like the middle of the first quarter or something, and he ends up sitting. So I think you got to be really cautious about starting Russell Wilson.
Wait, before you go, Wayne, since we're talking about Russ, I got a nice bet for you. Bet Russ under his pass attempts.
What is it?
I have no idea.
Oh, just whatever it is.
Whatever it is, just bet the under.
I agree with both of you that Aaron Rodgers is going to have to sling it this week. But I also agree with Aaron Rodgers that his wide receiver core right now looks like, do you remember the episode of The Simpsons when Homer was the coach and he took out the old electric football game and he watched the players go and he told them that's what they look like. So I do think Aaron Rodgers is going to sling it a lot, and I think it's going to land in empty spots because there's nobody there. So I'm going to tell you, against this Bills defense, to sit Aaron Rodgers this week. I just don't believe in any one of those wide receivers. I don't. Even Alan Lazard, the guy's a nice receiver.
Banged up though too.
He's banged up. If they had Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, Alan Lazard's a great wide receiver. The only problem is they don't have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and Alan Lazard is not that guy. So I'm saying to bench Aaron Rodgers. Honestly, I'll bench all three of these to be perfect.
Yeah, for sure.
So
absolutely, but let's bench Rodgers and really put our name on this.
Okay, I was gonna say Russ. Russ would be my first pick, but Rodgers is good. Running back, we'll go. Who just started there? Fee started there. Dunton, we'll start with you.
I'm benching Travis Etienne against the Broncos. That's the only thing that the Broncos can do right this year is play defense, and their defense is really good. So I'm benching Travis Etienne.
Hey.
Yeah, I'm going with David Montgomery. I know that he's been stellar this year for Chicago, but Dallas's defense is just insane. Micah Parsons is basically the defensive player of the year, and Dallas has just not given up a ton of yards on the ground, and they're just really good. I think I got to sit David Montgomery this week.
Plus, ever since the injury, since he missed a week, Khalil Herbert's, he's been over 40%, right? It used to be a 70-30, and now it's a lot 60-40. I think it was 55-45 this past week. They both did well.
Yeah, he's definitely been eating into Montgomery's carries.
Right, and that's when you become touchdown dependent, right? When you start losing those carries, and it's tough to score against the Cowboys. I'm going to tell you that I'm sticking with this game, but we were very high on him, even though he was RB2. I would tell you to sit Aaron Jones, but you can't sit Aaron Jones. But I am going to tell you to sit AJ Dillon because he is started in a large percentage of leagues, and first of all, he's banged up, right? He was dinked up, but I mean, he's just been awful the last few games. He's not involved in the passing game at all. It's all Aaron Jones when they go to the passing game, and they just can't get anything going with him. So I don't think he's startable anymore. And I don't know if you remember, but like week 1 or week 2, we were saying that he's the best RB2 and you could start him with confidence, and you just can't anymore. And I know for a fact I played 2 teams that started him last week. So there are still people starting AJ Dillon, and you can't do it this week against the Bills. I would lock in Montgomery though.
Yeah,
I like that
I'm Montgomery because like you said, Wayne, the carries, the load is a lot less. And Micah Parsons is absolutely defensive player of the year. So
he might be the offensive player of the year because he's going to start scoring touchdowns. Let's go to wide receiver. I'll start. This guy, I'm going with Amari Cooper Doop. The guy is peppered with targets. He's got to, I didn't look, but he's got to be among the league leaders in targets. He gets like 10 to 12 a game. The problem is he only catches 5 or 6 of them, right? And the Bengals have been surprisingly good against the pass or against fantasy receivers. They're allowing 16.3 points per game to receivers. And don't forget that you usually have 3 or 4 receivers. That's not just a one receiver. So
Right.
it's hard for and they've only allowed 3 touchdowns to wide receivers. And Koopa Doop has been a complete PPR because of the targets, a reception and yardage guy. He hasn't really been finding the end zone. So I think you sit Koopa Doop. Fee.
I am sitting all of the Pittsburgh receivers. Philly has the best defensive line in the game, and Pittsburgh's offensive line is one of the worst. I don't believe in Kenny Pickett, and I just think that Philly's too good, and they're just not going to give him enough time to get the ball anywhere. If anything, it's more dink and dunk, and I think you just got to sit all your Pittsburgh receivers this week.
Fair enough. Dutton.
I'm sitting another hamstring injury in Deebo Samuel, who did not practice today with a hamstring. And the Rams defense, even though the Rams offense is not clicking this year, their defense is still pretty good. And I just don't know if Deebo is going to have full stamina to go against that Rams defense.
Fair enough. I wouldn't start any of these guys. So whoever you guys want to pick, who do you want to go with?
Oof.
Go with Steelers because Pickett's been a hot start the last few weeks. He certainly has.
Got it.
He was my start last week. Was Pickens. Tight ends. I'll start. I'm going to tell you, you might see a theme here, ladies and gentlemen, but stay away from the Cowboy Bears game because the Bears have not allowed a touchdown to the the Cowboys have not allowed a touchdown to the tight ends, and I'm going to tell you to sit Cole Kmet. I just don't trust Justin Fields. I know he had a nice game against the Patriots, but I don't trust that guy as a quarterback against a tough defense like the Cowboys. Dutton.
I'm sitting Pat Freiermuth versus the Eagles. Fiamano said it all.
Okay, Fate.
And I am sitting Kyle Pitts,
the best offensive lineman in Atlanta.
100%.
The funny thing is that Kyle Pitts is an extraordinary player. He's really, really
Absolutely.
good.
You were on him in like 2 years ago on our shows. You were talking about him in college.
Yeah, and he's gotten amazingly good at blocking.
He's awesome at blocking.
which has gotten him zero, good looks for fantasy, and it's gotten him absolutely nowhere as far as a fantasy player is concerned. And Atlanta just continues to run the ball and use him as a blocker, and he's just not going to get any kind of volume or targets. I mean, at best, maybe he'll score a touchdown because if they decide to go play action or something near the goal line.
But even last week they did that. And he got crushed and he couldn't hold on to the ball. Like 3 guys.
Well, here's the thing: if you got points for blocking in fantasy football, Kyle Pitts would be a top 5 pick.
Right. They're blocking because Mariota can't throw the ball deep, right? Why are you not going with Desmond Ridder at this point? I get it. You're in first place, but you're in first place at 3 and 4, right? Like at some point the Saints and the Bucks are going to wake up a little bit and get to 500, and the Falcons are going to become the Falcons that we saw last week and finish the season probably with 2 more wins. Why are you not going with Desmond Ridder at this point?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, it is a good question. And it's been so disappointing as far as what they've been doing with Pitts.
I know.
I understand he's a good blocker, but like you got to use the guy for what he's good,
for what you traded to go get him.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Crazy. It's the same as Julio. Could you imagine if they traded all those picks and they made Julio the kick returner?
Right.
Like, no, you didn't go and trade your future for this. Yeah. Let's sit Pitts. I mean, he's not part of the game. No. He's not part of the game plan.
I like it.
So let's review your sits. At quarterback is Aaron Rodgers. Running back is David Montgomery. All of your Steelers wide receivers, pick anyone you want. Pickens is probably the big name there because he's been hot lately. And Kyle Pitts, the best offensive lineman in Atlanta. Anything else to add? We've had quite a week. This is our first show that we've ever gone over an hour because there was a lot to unwrap this week. Anything else?
Did
I
we
think-
even talk about McCaffrey's trade to San
No.
Francisco?
No.
Well, we've talked about it 2 weeks leading up. What do you want? Let's talk about it.
I mean, I haven't really spoken a whole lot about it, but like I feel like San Francisco has the best defense in the league, don't they?
Yeah.
And really, between Debo and Brandon Ayuk, I mean, Jimmy G has brought you to the NFC Championship game before. Now all of a sudden you get one of the best running backs in the game, and I don't really care that he's coming off, being injured the last couple of years. He's healthy now. And I feel like he's just going to make them a juggernaut of a team.
It's a great place for him.
Nice.
He's at home. He went to Stanford. He's playing for
But you also have Jeff Wilson, who's
Yep.
proven to be good.
so you
and
don't
you have
have
Eli
to run
Mitchell.
him into the ground.
You have Eli Mitchell coming off the IR. You're going to be able to save him until
Right.
not save him. You're going to play him, but he's not going to have 30 touches
No,
a game.
he doesn't
You
need
don't
to touch
to.
the ball 25 times. He can touch the ball 15 to 20 times and be very effective.
Be very effective. Yeah, I agree with you, Dunton. I think I
He's
don't know
also
if there was
playing for Kyle Shanahan, and his dad played for Mike Shanahan, which is very interesting.
Yeah. Eddie McCaffrey.
Right.
He was great when he played with Kyle. With Mike.
Yep.
Right. I agree with you, Dunton. I don't know that there was a more perfect landing spot for him because
it's
of
the
how
absolute
talented
best
the
spot
running
for him.
backs, are with him. And I think it's funny because we say that and they lost their first game with him,
Right.
but they were also playing the Chiefs, and the Chiefs look pretty incredible this year.
And they were coming off a big time loss against the Bills. So.
Right. They were, it was a redemption tour. But yeah, no, good one, Fee. I can't believe we forgot to talk about that. Anything else? Did we miss anything else?
I think that's it. I think.
All right,
in the
everybody, go win some games. We'll
Happy
talk.
Halloween.
We'll talk to you after Halloween. Don't forget, all the drug dealers are handing out drugs on Halloween, so check your candy and don't get high.
Right.
Because that's what drug
they tell
dealers
you.
do. They hand out drugs for free, disguised as candy.
Right.
That's what we're getting letters about for our kids. Anyway, have a great week of fantasy football. Win some money, and we'll see you next week.